For the first day of 2017, you've found the Georgia Gang. Topping our program today, we begin with a look ahead to 2017, especially at the state capitol. And we'll talk about Burl Ellis's last days at the helm of DeKalb County. And for a grand finale, we'll wrap up with winners and losers for 2016. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
We're glad you could be with us to start 2017. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you enjoy the football. Sadly, this coming week, we go back to work in earnest, all of us armed with our to-do lists and our resolutions and our big plans that we made over the holiday. But this is a good chance to look ahead to 2017. We'll look back a little bit as well, but I think this is an opportunity to clear away the 2016 elections, of which we were consumed, of course, and look ahead to what really is going to happen now that the elections have been put aside. And I'd like to start at the state capitol, where it's a pretty good situation for the governor and the General Assembly. Revenues are good. I won't go into them, Philip. I know you don't like me when I wear my green eye shade, but revenues are good and solid. It's no more recession, no more cutting. It's an opportunity to spend some of the growth. It's not a re-election year. So this is Governor Deal's really last session of the General Assembly, unencumbered by naked politics of the moment, though politics is always there. So I turn to you, Jeff. Education is this governor's priority. Education and jobs, I think, in his last 7 years. He's been stymied in his efforts to reform education. He has said this is the year, 2017, in which we'll take up how we pay for our schools, what share of money goes to whom. What do you think?
Well, you know, the Opportunity School District, which was a constitutional amendment on the ballot in 16, of course, was a big defeat, and I think a big disappointment for the governor, because he does want to put an emphasis on education. He sees that, I think, as a long-term legacy of his governorship, and rightfully so, because, you know, it's linked to investment in our future and future productivity, and that's where his emphasis ought to be. So the question now is, how do you pivot? After OSD, what can the governor do? What kind of investments can we make, especially with all this new revenue, to really put the emphasis on education in a way that it will produce some benefits down the road in future years?
Alexis, you and I and Jeff were together in 1983 when Governor Joe Frank Harris passed QBE, Quality Basic Education.
Right.
And his memorable words that he said all the time. Phil and Augusta, you heard these words too. We was always in favor of a quality basic education. That's what the governor of Georgia said at every stop. So now it's time to redo that, because 1983 was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And as Jeff alluded, Governor Deal wants to target the failing school districts, the kids that aren't making progress. How do we do that? How do we pay for it?
That is the $64,000 question, to be a throwback comment. I think the problem has always been that we haven't really looked at the impact of poverty on learning and education. He's trying, but it does take more money because of trying to make up for the missing resources that have been lacking for kids who have grown up and live in poverty. So
well, the flip side of the coin to that is the Atlanta Public School District is showering about $14,000 per student, and we aren't seeing improvements in some areas. We are in others, but I would maintain that you would have to be going to more parental choice.
Well,
but the problem with parental choice is that if you have an uneducated population that is in generational poverty, they don't have the capacity to organize and the time. They've got to work 24/7. Well,
but you know, Alexis, we all appreciate and we've all praised in this program Ron Clark and his Ron Clark Academy, where you have had some of the poorest kids. Now, yes, that's a private school, but we can duplicate that in public schools or charter schools if we've got discipline in the classroom and quality teachers.
But how do we apportion the money statewide? That's the problem.
Well, that's it. The K through 12 funding will be the focus.
That's what I'm getting
in this
at.
legislature.
Do you ask richer counties, for example, Cobb, Fulton, to subsidize the poorer counties.
Well,
DeKalb, by the
that
way,
kind of
has some of the worst schools in the state and yet is classified as a rich county.
That kind of equalization has gone on, of course, in counties all across the nation and for a couple of generations now. And should we be doing it in Georgia? Of course we should be doing it in Georgia because we've got an obligation, I think, to help the poorest school kids. But we haven't always done that. And sometimes our emphasis has been so misplaced that we've put more funding into education for gifted students, for instance, than for disadvantaged students. And that's something that needs to be able to change. So that where there has been disadvantage in the past, we give folks a head start. Now, I think that was the governor's attempt with OSD. I think that's what he was attempting to do, but the voters clearly rejected that approach, and we're just going to have to come up with another one.
All right, let's change the subject. Another big issue. Phil, I'll turn to you on this one, is Medicaid. The Republicans believing correctly that President Obama's Obamacare was a temporary fix, soon to be done away with. Georgia resisted bringing Medicaid for the poor, health care for the poor, into that system.
An expansion.
The expansion of it. They're going to have to do it now because the bed tax, which was very controversial among conservative Republicans, it was considered a tax increase.
It's a hospital
bed tax. It's up for renewal.
That's right. The legislature will be dealing with that. We'll be watching what happens in Congress, too, in January, because President-elect Trump is talking about block granting money back to the states, which could conceivably help solve this one problem. But if you don't, the argument is on the bed tax. If you don't renew it, you're going to blow a hole into the Medicaid budget.
Yeah, and now let's turn to another issue, and that's been with us for several years now.
But can I just point
Please.
out that 200,000 Georgians have signed up for Obamacare for 2017.
But nationwide, the numbers are just appalling.
Well, still,
Yeah, but that doesn't mean those 200,000 won't be insured.
That's
Well,
correct, but the fix, whatever fix they do, is going to have to consider the
Some of
impact
them
that
only
it
have
has.
one insurance carrier in almost the majority of Georgia counties.
They have one choice.
Even Democrats admit now, Alexis, that it's a broken system.
I mean, one choice is better than none. You got
Right.
20 million people, 25 million people nationally. I don't think that this thing can be undone in a month. It's going to take some time. I
Oh,
think that
no
even
question.
Secretary to be Price has said so, that it's going to take some time to unravel or change or amend or evolve.
So it may
and
be
I
they
think
don't
that
do anything big this session,
I
and they
know.
simply renew the
Yeah,
bed
you're
tax.
talking about in Georgia, exactly right.
It's the
you're
rural
gonna have to be
hospitals
able-
that
It's
we've
the
gotta
rural
focus
hospitals
on.
that are really going to suffer and have been closing because of a lack of funding.
Two more quick issues before we run out of time on this section. Religious liberty, it looks to me as if that bill, which has consumed the General Assembly for the last couple of years, is dead for a lot of reasons. First of all, Governor Deal vetoed it, so he's not likely to sign one.
Right.
I think there is a consensus that this is a federal fix. This is an issue. If it needs to be fixed, Congress should be the ones to do it. Now, Senator Josh McCoon, who has led that fight, I noticed the Political Insider said that he's been stripped of his may have been stripped of his chairmanship of the Judiciary Committee. So he won't be in a position to move it the way he has.
Well, I think you're right. I think there's more of a movement, whether you like it or not, to have it fixed at the federal level. And you're right, as long as you have Governor Deal here, I don't think it's going to get anywhere. I think you'll see also one of my pet bills, the campus carry bill, will be introduced again. It might be tweaked. As you remember, it passed the legislature and then was vetoed by Governor Deal, caused a firestorm.
We got to get out. There's one more topic that will be big before the General Assembly, and that could be summarized by this famous phrase: gambling. Gambling right here in River City. Yes, the General Assembly is going to be under pressure from the big casino operators to legalize gambling. We'll see how far that goes.
They're writing the legislation as we speak.
But I don't think it passes this year. Anyway, that's all coming up in January. When we return, we'll turn to the local news of the week, including the farewell of Burl Ellis. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We're going to try to quickly navigate through the news of the week so that we can talk about trends of the year past and the year ahead. Let's begin right here in Georgia, where the new Attorney General, Chris Carr, has taken a second step toward restoring the 10th Amendment to its good graces. He's joined with other attorneys general to fight the water regulations promulgated by the EPA, I guess. They've given it some immense title like Waters of the Earth or Waters of the World. But basically, if you're a farmer and you've got a patch of low-lying land that turns into a big puddle at some times of the year, it's regulated by the feds. And there's
It's called a
unanimous.
wetland. Yeah.
The Trump states, the red states, absolutely oppose this.
Yeah.
Chris Carr, the Attorney General's joined in. Not much more to say.
Well, you might see President-elect Trump's EPA chief helping out here too. In fact, you're going to see a rollback of this overregulation. That's one thing.
Well, the
and
trend
some of
will
that
be-
obviously affects Georgia, like this issue.
The trend will be the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. Power devolves to the states.
You also had a candidate, Trump, campaigning saying we're going to have the cleanest water we've ever had, and you can't. I mean, how are we going to,
Well, you can have a balance, Jeff.
Well,
you can have a balance.
Not if you don't protect those rivers and streams that are flowing into some.
But we are. The issue is over-regulation versus reasonable regulation. That's been the whole argument.
Well,
Speaking
and we'll
of
see
that,
where the new
lands,
president comes
right?
along on that.
And now, closer to home, in the Common Sense Department, kind of a surprise to me, the city of Atlanta has reactivated a reservoir called Hemphill Number 1. I have a vague memory of that. And it's all part of this quiet effort to give the city a 30-day water supply. And you remember we all commented, you mean we have less than a 30-day water supply? And I noticed Kasim Reed this week, or not the mayor himself, but the watershed department announced that that's quickly to be reopened. And then they're building that big quarry thing,
quarry.
which would give the
West
city
side.
30 days.
West side.
That's pretty good stuff. Now, two outgoing county leaders, both controversial but interesting in their own right. Let's begin in DeKalb County, where Burl Ellis, after his bribery perjury conviction was overturned, was allowed to come back to work for 2 weeks. And he had a press conference the other day and said he did a lot of stuff. I was a little bit impressed by a letter he sent to the citizens of DeKalb about the water billing problems. It was measured, it was thoughtful, it laid out the steps. You got 104,000 water customers whose bills, probably a majority of them, have been messed up, my own included. I can't get a printed bill from them, which leads to cutoff notices.
Right.
Others I know get $1,000 bills. Burl Ellis announced it. I sense Lee May did all the prep work on that when he was the interim CEO.
Well, I think the bill. I think that Burl wanted to make some progress in that very brief period of time in office, and he did so. And this is a great step in the right direction. And I think that the new CEO is probably going to carry on with that. We still need to know what went wrong.
By the way, I
and
understand
how we're
Michael
going to fix
Thurman's
it.
water bills have been messed up too.
Exactly right. But we still need to know what went wrong and how we can fix it and how we can accurately measure water usage in DeKalb County, because that's still not happening.
They bought new meters that didn't work, and now we're trying it again. Now let's go over to Cobb County, where Tim Lee is leaving. I'm a strong Tim Lee advocate on policy, not so much on how he handled things.
Right.
But at any rate, to me, he is the classic prophet without honor in his own land.
Well, he brought
Brave
it on.
Stadium,
He brought it on
huge
himself.
commercial development. Well, yeah, but
220
he leaves
acre development.
a Brave Stadium, a huge bit of economic development and jobs,
Right.
and yet he can't get a job.
Right. Well, just to kind of step back a second, yes, he'll be known for bringing the Braves and the stadium to Cobb County. No question. We all agree on that. However, he's the poster boy for someone who is not transparent at all and is a failure at public relations. And I'll never forget how he shut out all opponents and questioners to the stadium and hauled out some elderly man that tried to speak. And that you don't conduct a democratic form of government like that. I'm sorry. Mike Boyce, who is the new incoming Cobb chairman, I think is a breath of fresh air. I think he's going to bring some transparency, and I think he's going to. He's got a big job trying to work with the Braves and with the traffic concerns.
Exactly.
Well, that's going to be the most fun story of
I was
April.
going to say, Tim Lee may be counting his blessings that he don't have to deal with that.
It's a huge irony when you bring that kind of economic development to a county and then you end up losing your job. But I think that Phil is right. It really did revolve around the issue of transparency more than anything
At
else.
that public hearing, Phil mentioned it, when they lined up all the speakers, and they were all pro-stadium speakers, and they shut out all the anti-stadium speakers, that flipped a switch in the minds of Cobb County voters, I believe. That's my sense of it. So we mentioned Michael Thurman coming in DeKalb. The Dunwoody Crier this week reported that Ed Lindsay, the former House Majority Whip, a very powerful and thoughtful Republican, has been hired. Talk about selling your soul to the devil. He has been hired in his role as a lobbyist by the DeKalb County school system to fight the bill allowing Dunwoody to have an independent school system. And you know, I love Ed Lindsay. I've known him for years. I just thought to myself, I had to laugh. We had the county hiring Roy Barnes to stop Dunwoody from becoming a city at $750 an hour. I'm looking for Lindsay's hourly rate, by the way. Come on, Ed, you might as well send it to me because it's a public document. And if we can beat Roy Barnes, why can't we beat Ed Lindsay? Just a little Dunwoody home
Personal
cooking.
issue you've got there.
And so I think I got to all those topics, didn't I?
You know, there is one little bit of politics that you had said the elections were over with. Not quite in one Senate district,
you're right.
Senate District 54, and you've got Chuck Payne, the Republican, versus Debbie Peppers, who was a Hillary Clinton supporter, and they're having a runoff election, and so
Poor guy had
low
to,
turnout.
he had to say had to file bankruptcy
but in 2013.
In 2013.
He did, but you know what? He said a lot of people did under the Obama
She says
recession.
she's an independent, and the Democratic Party of Georgia is doing her public relations.
Right, and
I
elections
see.
are over, except as we get into 2017, the city elections are going to kick off.
Oh, that's right. And the mayor's race, where
Mayor's
Roy
race.
Barnes, I mentioned Roy Barnes, he endorsed Vincent Fort. The Democrats have learned no lessons. Please.
Well, you know, the first shot of the mayoral race in Atlanta will be January 25th before the Buckhead Coalition.
That's
You've
right.
got 7 of the top candidates there, so that kicks it off.
All right, we got to get out of this segment. When we return, we're going to go back to that theme of what have the Democrats learned from 2016 and the more than 1,000 Democratic office holders around the nation wiped out by Barack Obama. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
I mentioned sort of tongue-in-cheek that former Governor Roy Barnes endorsed Vincent Fort in the Atlanta mayor's race. And that, I mean it seriously, what have the Democrats learned? Vincent Fort is a Bernie Sanders socialist running for mayor of Atlanta. And I want to not so much talk about Vincent Fort because we'll have plenty of time this year to talk about the mayor's race with its very crowded and capable field. But the Democrats, they can't go that direction, folks. They lost more than 1,000 office holders. They only control, 13 governorships and legislatures all in the same state around the country. They're a mess.
We've seen Roy Barnes make these kinds of endorsements in the past. I think that they're rooted in history and people that he's worked with over the past in the legislature and as governor. And of course, Vincent Fort has been for a long time a senator,
David Scott.
State senator there.
Yeah, he owed Vincent a favor.
He went over to DeKalb County and endorsed Robert James to the surprise of a lot of people. And so this endorsement is also surprising to some, but I think considering their history,
Understandable given the history.
their working history, that maybe it's not so surprising.
Dick, it's interesting that our sometime colleague here on the Georgia Gang, Theron Johnson, had a blistering critique of the state Democratic Party and the fact that it hasn't been able to really come up with good candidates statewide. They don't control any statewide constitutional offices or the governorship. And so he thinks that the DuBose Porter in the state party is just dead. He calls it a dead strategy.
They can't win without some sort of centrist policy, and I mean this nationally as well. Look, late in the week, the Atlantic had a really penetrating analysis. This is just one example, as the Democrats continue their autopsy, that people who believe in religion abandon the Democratic Party in droves because of speeches like the one Hillary gave, Hillary Clinton, when she said deep-seated beliefs about, for example, homosexual marriage, she mentioned something else, abortion, have got to be changed. Well, people don't change their religious beliefs, and it's not the job of political parties to make them change.
Well,
so the religious voters, I was always concerned about Trump. Could he draw the religious voters?
That's
he
why
didn't so
that
much as she
puts
drove
the
them
lie to
away.
your
I think that's a
argument,
good point.
because he is no moral
I mean, he was
person.
asked by a radio
Shoot.
interviewer what his favorite Bible verse was, and he said,
But you know, that's really not the point, because
not a bad
while I agree with you, I think it goes back to the pocketbook. We all agree with that.
Well,
I think you all agree that the Democratic Party did not reach the working man and woman of this country.
Well,
no question about
I agree that the whole thing was turned upside down because of the candidacy of Donald Trump.
So who's your
He
political
trashed
winner of the
everybody,
year?
and so the
Yeah,
idea was to
let's
fight
do
back.
that.
Well, she's getting into this rap. Who's your political winner of the year?
Well,
Alexis?
it has to, unfortunately, on the national level, be Donald Trump.
There you go. Jeffrey, what do you think?
Political winner of the
Yeah.
year, or
Actually, what's going on for the last 2 years?
as statesman?
I think you're
because I
gonna
think
say
if
Trump
you were
is
to,
the-
if you
is
were
the
to name a
political winner.
statesman, you'd have to say it would be Barack Obama,
Right.
who went through 8 years without a hint of scandal or wrongdoing of any sort at all.
Right.
And this has not been the case with a
He's a
lot
good
of
dad.
presidents.
He's a good dad, I'll
He's
give
a
him
good
that.
dad,
And
and
he
he's been
was
a
a
great
good
president.
politician,
So what do you
As a
think?
politically, yeah, I mean, Donald Trump fooled everybody,
All right,
including a field of
Obviously,
17 in the
I know we got to
Republican
get out of
Party.
this segment. I think Donald Trump, but I disagree with Jeff. I think Barack Obama laid the groundwork for the Trump candidacy.
Because he's black.
No,
Yes.
because of the economy.
No,
You had more,
not because he's
and let me
black.
just finish my
Thank you.
point.
No, no.
Let me just finish my point. You
Without
had
him,
more.
there would be no Donald Trump.
Alexis, you know this darn well. There are more
True.
people who've stopped looking for work in recent years. There's more people working 2 and 3 jobs. There's
He led the birther
underemployment.
movement. That's what put Donald Trump
No,
on the
it's-
map.
Stop
it's
it. That's
economic.
wrong. It's because
Please.
Americans' personal income did not grow post 2007 and is lower.
Whites
Black
voted
American
for,
wealth
Whites
has been
voted
wiped
for him
out.
twice.
Yeah, but
Yes.
that's not Barack Obama's.
Yeah, it is.
That's not on Barack Obama's watch. It's because we have a serious issue with division of
You gotta get out.
of
We gotta get
wealth
out
and
before-
assets in this country.
And-
So
Ford
like
Berger.
Bernie
Wait a minute.
Sanders-
No,
We
and
gotta
it's
get
true.
out.
The
And it's true, and it's not going to change under. It's
That's
not going
right.
to change
We're
under
gonna come
Donald
back
Trump.
And the technological age has transformed the way work gets done around here. You need fewer people to do it, and that's been the real culprit.
All right,
of
when we
jobs.
come back, we'll continue this discussion, but we'll take a look overall, state and local, and so I guess this would be our personal reflections on the year past and maybe the year ahead. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
We're going to try to use some familiar names to sum up the year in politics and look ahead, and I'm going to start with you, Jeffrey.
Well, thank you. Again, I think Barack Obama, not just last year, but for the last 8 years, has been a statesman and a gentleman, and has governed our nation in a way that we can all be proud. I hope that Donald Trump can follow his very presidential approach to the office and respect for the office of the presidency. Let's hope that he can. I think that Kasim Reed has had a tremendous year, also a tremendous term. And you can see it, Turner Field is going to be closing in a couple of days, and progress down in underground Atlanta and throughout the city. I mean, he's just done a terrific job. Loser of the year has got to be Robert James over in DeKalb County, the district attorney, who lost not just the his office, but the Burrow Ellis case was overturned. He had prosecuted a police officer, and the Supreme Court sent that back as well. And you can't count more losses in a single year or a single term.
All right. What do you have there, Alexis?
Okay, nationally, we already acknowledged Donald Trump winning everything. But I also agree with Jeff that Barack Obama has been an amazing president in spite of all the opposition that was given to him both personally and politically. I also think that locally, the mayor has been a good mayor and done a great job in recovering the economy. And I want to salute him again for the mayor's mass ball, raised a record $1.3 million this year. So they continue to do good things to help students and make the city better.
Philip?
Well, obviously, Donald Trump, a historic win by an outsider. And Barack Obama, I'm sorry, the loser, his command and control economy and Obamacare, the mess, the recent stabbing of Israel in the back has made him a loser. I will say Governor Deal and his economic team have done a great job over the past year. And again, Site Selection Magazine says we're the best state to do business in. That is something we all can be proud of. And, I want to just give a shout out to Linda Klein, who was an Atlanta attorney, and she became president of the American Bar Association, a very prestigious thing. So hats off to her.
My loser of the year would be Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, the National Democratic Party, for persisting in identity politics, tribalism. Donald Trump is being criticized as part of a rise in nationalism, but we are Americans first. And so I see no problem with that. I think it's much more dangerous to go down the route the Democrats have been for years and years now, of pitting one ethnic group, gender, and so forth against each other.
So,
I think that's a disaster. And then this comes late, but John Kerry has got to be the loser of this year and so many other years. For him to stab Israel in the back, and then for him to proclaim that the state of Israel cannot be Jewish and democratic at the same time, is beyond the pale of American thought. It is a disaster. And you say Obama's a statesman, he presided over that. And finally, in a personal kind of a note, a winner of this year and the last several decades, Dr. Thomas Sowell, the professor at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, and a newspaper columnist of long standing, the most thoughtful conservative philosopher out there. He's decided to hang up his column at age 86. I hate it, but I understand it. We'll see you next week, not next year, we're in this year, right?
It's already 2017.
We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang, the ratings willing and the management approving.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing.